Hello and welcome to iMoot16. And with us today we've got Andy Chaplain, who is presenting about teaching languages with Moodle. Andy is also part of the iMoot team. On behalf of the iMoot team, Andy, I'd like to thank you very much for your for both your participation as a presenter and for helping us organise the event this year.
Thanks, Vinny. Okay, so to give you a little bit of background, I've been using Moodle for about 8 or 9 years now, and I think like most teachers, we all believe that our subject is special and different from other subjects. But certainly with language teaching, there are one or two things which are a bit different from other subjects. And I think one of the problems that the language teacher faces is it's a very dynamic subject. Things crop up in lessons that are really nothing to do with the intended subject for that, or the intended topic for that lesson. And that's something that normally a very structured environment has problems with. And I think the important thing to remember is if you look at a lot of Moodle courses, they very often look quite similar. There's this discussion on Moodle.org sometimes about making Moodle look less Moodly. And it's quite difficult sometimes to think. You see all these courses on Moodle and then you sort of start making them the same way because that's the way that everybody else is doing it. And so I started looking really a couple of years ago at thinking very hard about the modular aspect of Moodle and taking a bit more control and not letting it demand how I present the course. The problem is that Moodle is really, really well developed. There are so many options available. And when you start looking at all the plugins that you have, it's very difficult sometimes to sort of get an overview and think, okay, I can use that. And you need to step back a little bit and think about the traditional teaching, then the online teaching, then the blended learning concept, flipped classrooms, and all these different options that you have available to you now as a teacher, and then see how you can use Moodle, or which parts of Moodle you can use to best deliver that learning experience. I think certainly one of the things that I've found certainly in the last couple of years is that the online teaching aspect is becoming much more important. For a long time I've been doing a more or less blended learning approach with my learners. I teach in a secondary school in Germany, and I also teach in industry. Really, I should have put those two the other way around. My main job is teaching in industry, but I also have a role in a secondary school. And at the start, Moodle was in effect my homework manager. I used it to create quick little practice tests, short presentations to bridge the gap between the face-to-face lessons. It's changed rather now, and certainly the idea of this flipped classroom where the real work is done between the face-to-face lessons has become more dominant. But that sets out a number of challenges for the teacher. And you need to look at different ways of presenting the materials and giving options to the learner, because to a certain extent what you're doing is you're giving up control. Moodle, I found this picture of the longest bridge in the world, the longest water bridge in the world, in America. And I thought it was rather good because it's sort of what the teacher would always hope things to be, this sort of long road ahead, fairly straight, with a few, you see a little bit of mist and cloud on either side, where the problems crop up. But that's the sort of the teacher's idealized view of their course. Unfortunately, in the lesson, it looks more like this. Does anyone know where this is? This is quite a famous part of the world. Well, this roundabout is quite... Yay, Swindon, yes. I've actually been through this thing, the magic roundabout. The first time I saw it was actually at about 5 o'clock on a summer's morning, which was great. And I came in somewhere on the right of this thing, and I'd heard about it, and nothing prepares you for actually meeting this. Oh, congratulations. Nothing prepares you for this when you see it for the first time. It is truly unbelievable. And there's a similar one in Hemel Hempstead, and I had to drive that one a few times, and it's really quite scary. But honestly, I think that's what most language lessons are like. I can't count the times that I've walked into a language lesson with a plan, and a student has said something in the first couple of minutes which has thrown the plan out of the window because they've made a really significant error which needs dealing with, and the lesson goes away. Or you're working on a lesson, it's going fine, and then in the middle of the lesson something crops up which does need addressing. Language teaching is unusual in that you're teaching the means of communication as well as teaching objectives, and the means is much more complicated. And so I think this is an ideal image for most language teachers to have of this complex system where lots of things are going on at the same time, and you need to be a bit of a juggler. Now, that's not very easy to reconcile with a very linear structure, which you can create very easily in Moodle. So we need to look now at ways of giving the learner the chance to make these diversions and for the teacher to be able to cover all the bases. This is actually something that I created quite a while ago. I have a course which I'll show you later when I share my screen, which I call Warehouse, and that's where I put most of my materials, so that I can take blocks out and import them and create new courses, because recycling materials is really important in language teaching. You're doing the same thing a lot in lots of different courses. It's not like teaching a history course or even something like chemistry, where certain elements are there for that unit and really don't need to be presented again. Here, in language, you very often need to return to the same things. You're returning to tenses, you're returning to relative clauses, you're returning to irregular verbs, of course, and these things crop up in various different courses. So recycling is very good. Here I had something which is used in an awful lot of business courses, writing emails, and that's only a part of the introduction to it, and the content I was quite happy with, but it's pages long, and that's very easy to create in Moodle. You create labels, and these labels, you can put them in different orders, but they end up as a long shopping list of labels. And so one of the things that I really tried to do was to make the whole thing a little bit more compact, and to give the learners the choice of choosing which bits they wanted to see while still having a progression for them. What this does is a bit scary for teachers, I think, because it's changing the balance of power, and it's taking the control aspect away, which certainly when you start out as a teacher is something you really want. You want to be in control of the lesson. You are the star of the show. You're meant to be there, the expert who knows everything. But the moment you give learners choice, and the more choice you give them, you end up in a situation where the control is gone, because the learners are choosing where they want to go with their learning, and you have this more mentor role or coaching role. You don't have that control element, or it's certainly very much weakened. The KISS principle, which I believe is a very, very useful thing when it comes to designing, and certainly when it comes to teaching, is hard to reconcile with this complex dynamic situation which you've got in a language course. And so you go from keeping it short and simple to a plate full of spaghetti. And that's really a very good image, I think, of what the learner objectives are in a course. You've got people that know different things. Even single words can make a difference. A little bit of vocabulary, just one or two words can make a huge difference to an activity. The learner that has those words can progress. Those that can't have the problem of mastering it without keywords. They may have different objectives or desires from learning in that moment. And so everything gets a bit tangled up. Altogether, you have this nice basis of everything being covered, but the individual strands are very difficult to master. And then you can offer everything to everybody. Now that it's very easy in Moodle, and it's certainly essential if you're going to produce a good Moodle course, is to produce variety. But how do you avoid this sort of pop-up hell of having so many things? You've got on one side, you've got the scroll of death, where everything's in a long list, and here you've got everything all over the place. And you need to find this control element, this happy medium between complete linear learning and complete anarchy. And now I'm gonna make a mini pause in a couple of seconds and switch to screen sharing, which I hope is going to work. But what I really want to say is I'm going to show you now some of the things that I've done, and this is neither a do as I say, nor a do as I do. It's what I have done. And I very much believe that teachers should find their own style. And Moodle allows that because there are so many options there for you to use and create your own way of doing things. And you have to be comfortable with that. If you're not comfortable with the environment, the learner is never going to be comfortable. So I've developed something that works for me. It may give you some ideas, but ultimately, the important thing is that you start to think about how you can remodel your courses to cover all the needs of the disparate learners that you have. So here, I've moved away from my scroll of death. And you can see in the top right of the page, I'm using a plugin which Gareth created, the grid format, which since I discovered it has become my standard. I don't produce any courses without this format. For me, it should really be a part of the core Moodle system. It's such an intuitive way of laying out courses. And under that, you can see a module from a course, which I'll also show you, where I've really worked on trying to get everything in a module onto one page, or at the very most 1.5 pages, screen pages. so that the learner has a compact overview and can go from image to image and from activity to activity without having to look down endless pages on the computer screen. Aha, okay. Thanks for that, Gareth. I wasn't aware of that, but certainly you're seen as the guru in that respect now. I wasn't aware that other people had done the work before you, but nonetheless, your efforts there are really appreciated. Okay, so if everything goes bang now, because the screen sharing doesn't work, but I will have a go. So let's see what happens. Right. So I'm waiting for some signal to appear here. Allow. Okay. If I'm right, you should be able to see have you got some kind of pop-up window with the window that you can now see? Is that right? Can I just get a yes or no? Yes. Okay. Great. So, what I've got here is my a page which is a course which I've developed for fairly senior management, and this page or this course is really looking at management philosophy. I've combined what they like to call CLIL, content and language integrated learning. I've combined learning about management thinking and language teaching. The idea here is the managers can choose particular courses. There are modules on Taylor, the man who brought the stopwatch to manufacturing, and management thinkers, the Galbraiths and Henry Ford, and then up to more modern people like Taiichi Ono, who created the Toyota production system, and Jack Welch from General Electric. The content of the course, and this is a course that's I'm currently putting together. I got rid of the top part of the course as much as possible, in as far as I created a banner at the top of the page with a few key questions. There's a course announcements forum, and there's a general discussion forum. But the learner will be able to take, for example, the Taylor course or the Taylor module, and will find a book, a general introduction, and here will come the language, the target language for the module, describing processes and describing trends. And here we see basic tenses: present simple, present continuous. These things managers need them too. These be recycled from other units and put there, and then more historical background, looking at the work of Henry Gant, who was one of Taylor's great assistants. So each course will have its own type language, or each module will have its own type language, but it allows a certain choice from the learner if they can go backwards and forwards and focus on things that are primarily of interest to them. I'll just quickly come back to the main image to see if there's anything here. No, okay, no questions up to now, so I will continue. Here's a course which I created for the secondary school, and this is a mixture of my original sense of homework and preparation work, but has now become much more important. I'm able with this with these objectives to do things like create modules where the students have a little more choice. Obviously, in a school environment, there is a more controlled progression. Things like tests to be done at certain times, but there's also the resource idea here. You'll see, for example, that we have a section here on Torchwood, a British sci-fi series. Pretty much every week we watch an episode of Torchwood, and again here I keep the page as short as possible. There's a very short introduction. Using audio, embedding audio is now much simpler than it used to be in Moodle. It works pretty effectively, and I try for most of the text pieces that I use to create an audio file. I just record something. I use free software and just record me reading it, that they have another stimulus, another sense to take effect. And you see here every week there's a book and a crossword. And here I'm using elements. The book is a relatively simple introduction to the video that we're going to watch the next week, has a short introduction, and key vocabulary. That vocabulary that you see there are mostly words that are used in a special context within the video. And I create a glossary with those meanings. But the glossary only kicks into focus. At the moment, you can't click on these words and get the glossary because the students are meant to check these for themselves first. When they've finished activities, then the glossary becomes available for later reference, that they can go back and see what these words are. And then a springboard, usually to something that will be done in a forum or discussed in class after the episode. All of that could be put in one line. You could put that in a row in using labels, but it's much more compact doing it in that way, and gives much more optically a much better impression. The cross is only available when they've done the vocabulary exercises in the and check the vocabulary in the glossary. That triggers then a crossword which checks vocabulary. What I discovered, and this is something that certainly needs thinking about, is that some kids who are really quite good at English and they do all their homework, and one or two actually just hate crosswords. A lot of them think they're great puzzles, and they can do that, and it's all good fun. But some really do dislike this activity, which surprised me because I thought people who are good will do most activities. And that was really one of the first things that set me thinking about providing alternative activities. Some just prefer to write the words into a gap fill text rather than doing a crossword. So this option is available, this either or creating 3 or 4 options, and that the learner can choose which one they want to do. something that Christoph said in his talk an hour ago about the preparation time and helping tutors that don't have a lot of preparation time. This is something that is very preparation intensive. It's a long and tiring process creating these course materials and creating all these options. I'm not saying it's easy, but at the end of it, you have a much richer environment and it's recyclable. So it's quite useful. Once you've done the work, it's there for future courses. Everything okay? People's not died or gone to sleep? No? Okay, good. Wonderful. Here's this warehouse that I talked about earlier, which is just a storage space where activities that aren't maybe complete yet, but there's some information is stored. And I really recommend that everybody who's teaching languages creates one of these courses. You can make it hidden so that only you or other teachers have access to it. But it's really important when you put things together, where's that exercise on? And if you start looking through 20, 30 different courses trying to find it, you will have a problem. So basically put the things in the warehouse course. You can always go back to it and see that original thing, this horribly long email introduction, which is now in a book, broken up into short pages and created as a book. And here you see some of the Torchwood activities here are stored, and other things that are going to be used at a later date in other courses. Another course, which again is not directly responsible related to teaching, but very, very important for teachers, I think, is to have a plug-in tester or a sandpit, call it whatever you like. But it allows you to check out particularly widgets, things with the layouts. Here I've got a block with where I tried out putting an assignment deadline in a block, particularly useful for school courses, and other things, and you'll see ideas that are here, and I just tried things out. You can do it with actually having to go onto a live course or go to the lengths of having a separate Moodle instance to do this thing. Here, again, a glossy event was a video of the day, created using a glossary with links to different videos, and means that every time students log in, they get a different video about different subjects related to the course. Here I was testing some things with Big Blue Button, and here a really important tool, and one of my most important tools when it comes to Moodle is the Generico plugin, created by Justin Hunt, who's also known as Poodle Guy, the man behind Poodle, which is the audio and video plugin, which as a language teacher you can't do without. But he also created Generico, which is a great way. It's a Swiss Army knife for layouts, and you can create things like this screenshot, which I did to allow people to use in forums to give advice of what's coming up, news flash type thing, creating that in a different or a slightly more humorous way, adding your own image to the background. Here, you've got forms embedded with so you can put a Google form in without to take up enormous amounts of screen space. You just click on it and it comes as a drop down. This final part, before I get onto that. Okay, see, yeah, Vinny's had to take over somebody else now. Okay, thanks, Gareth. part which I want to show you, which is really what this is all about, this presentation, is a course which I've set up. I've set it up on I've created a separate instance of Moodle apart from my normal teaching course. And this subdomain is just for teachers. And they're going to offer courses which are courses and meeting places which are free for teachers to use. There's no cost involved whatsoever. It's just a meeting place where people can look at ideas, things that I've tried out, and showcase their own ideas. And you'll see here, very similar to the management course, I've got the banner, which is a generico filter was created. There's no real coding involved. You can take the code. I will give you the code for the for this banner, and you just put your own pictures and language in. Again, creating space on the course to encourage the learner. The introduction, there's a drop down. People don't need to see that every time they log in. They need to see it probably once. So I created it as a button, which allows people to see the introduction, the course aims, and listen to it. Again, demonstrating, obviously teachers don't need to hear my voice, but showing them how they can do things in their own courses. Again, the central forum, a chat room, very useful for students. Running a clinic. I have, I don't even know really what the word in English. I'm trying to think of it now. Germans have this wonderful word, Sprechstunde, so talking hour, when you're available for discussions with students. But I run that at a particular time each week. All of my courses have one of these. And I say that on Mondays between 6 and 7 p.m. I'm available there, using Big Blue Button for the same reason. Occasionally having set events over Big Blue Button, but also having a general meeting time, rather like the cafe sessions that we've got at iMoot, and then a general discussion forum. If we go into the first section here, you'll see again, I've been taught, there's some information here about layout and labels. And one thing which I find very useful for language teaching is the Moodle. You can embed anything in this little window. I've used it here just to put in an example video from YouTube. But what you see outside of the mode is the rest of the screen is still there, but it's been darkened, and it creates focus. Just embedding the video here, it becomes like an image. Yes, you play it, but it's an image. Here, it's really presented into the student, gets their attention, and gives them an action which makes them positive about engaging in the learning. It's no longer a passive issue. A book here, also little tricks, very useful for language teaching. Check your answer. You give them a short question. It could be anything. Yeah, it might be a piece of vocabulary. It might be a reading comprehension, that type of thing. But you can just click it and the answer appears there. Again, this is a generico thing. It's a simple little unit that you can add to your editing bar in the label section, and you just click on it and add this widget, which allows you to do that. And here in the book, here's some of the different things that you can add to create them. It's a how-to, basically. And the last thing I wanted to show you It's not that page. It was probably in here. Yeah. Here I've looked at various resources that you can use. There's information about glossaries, ideas on how to use them, a book on books. And here we have the one of the problems which I've also referred to, of people with different levels of knowledge within the same course. Very often it's not easy to separate courses into good groups. You're going to have weaker and stronger people, and particularly in the corporate environment. And so the book gives you, for example, again, a function which you use in, it's again a generic overflow. I'm starting to sound like an advertisement for Justin Hunt here. For Justin, this was taken from Breaking News, English.com, where they create, or a guy called Sean Banville creates endless activities based on current affairs. And here I took some text. You can have a text at level 1, a slightly more complex text at level 2, level 3, and there a much more complex text. The same information, just more in a more complicated way. And that's all available. If you have different groups, you can tell students that they should really be looking at whichever level, or the student can work their way through these levels themselves. And again, here's the how-to, there's the code, which you just copy and paste, or you use a filter. And then almost always bring them back to the forum where they can talk about it, some ideas which they can then bring back into the discussion in the classroom. So things like that. Course navigation, if you want people to get outside the course, something like Symbaloo here allows you to create your own link. Again, that takes up quite a lot of space, so hide it behind a button. It comes then as a drop down, and there people can link directly. You can create your links. You can link directly to external sites. I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say. I'm going to stop sharing my doc now. Oops. There. Okay, so let me just see. Yeah. So that circle time is yeah. In industry, they have also words. I think they call them Porter circles and quality circles and things like that. But the idea is really to not be pressurized into the easy option with Moodle, because it is terribly easy in Moodle to create simple courses. I created my first course and test in Moodle in under half an hour, including installing Moodle. And I'm not a computer expert. I just clicked on a button on a free website hosting, and a few minutes later, Moodle was up and running. And half an hour later, I had a very simple multiple choice test up and running. But it is very easy to get into these habits of just doing the easy things, what's in front of your nose. And really what I think is very important in the languages is to provide these options. And so for that reason, I've created this course for teachers. And certainly I would be more than happy if some of you want to get involved. You'll see in the course attached to this that there's a link where you can put your details in, and I will send you a user login. I don't allow direct logins to the course or public logins. I do need to keep an eye on how many people are using it. So just send me your information, and I will send you a user login and an initial password. the idea is really that teachers have somewhere to exchange ideas, look at a few new things, and get involved with creating their own courses in the way they want them, rather than in the way that they think that everybody else is doing it. I know some of you are there at probably rather unsociable hours, so thank you very much for taking the time to listen. I hope that it's been useful to you, and if you've got questions, please ask them now. Thank you.
Hi, Andy, it's Gareth from the iMoot team. Just while people are maybe perhaps writing questions, and can I thank you on behalf of the iMoot team for putting together a superb presentation and all the time that goes into it. Really fascinating. And I also thought with how you got a course for materials, and maybe is there something like repositories that maybe that could be used that are now coming along, instead of having a course for your sort of database of materials, that you had a repository? I'm not sure if that's something that can happen.
I'm sure it can. When I started doing the warehouse idea, they didn't really exist, or they were rather complex. And what I was trying to do was minimize the teaching for my colleagues. It's enough showing them how to use Moodle and how to create Moodle units without then giving them another thing to learn how to do. But I'm sure that it's getting better, and it's something that certainly, I'm sure within a year or so, will be much easier to use than it currently is. Yeah, the link is on the, if you look at my, I think it says further information. I'll just have a quick look myself to see where I've put it. It's if you, Eric, if you look at activities and resources on the Moodle page, you'll see there. Click here. Just click on that, or send me a message via the Moodle messaging system, and I'll do that for you. There's no problem. Okay, so if anything else people want to ask? Good to see you got that, Eric. Thanks. Yeah, final words would be really, it's like I said, it's I think the idea, a lot of teachers and certainly the innovators in Moodle are very much on their own. They're probably the one in their organization that are really keen on it, and certainly I'm the main motivator within my company and within the school where I work, and that means that it's more work for me or for you. But having somewhere to meet and share ideas and bounce ideas around and hear things like that, I think is a good thing. And like I said, that's the reason I set this course up for people, and I hope that you'll find it useful.